Hey, I'm Ryan. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you guys for watching, and I really appreciate all the kindness and support that I've gotten in the last 5 weeks that I'm uploading. Really sorry to be coming late with this one. I got a hand injury, so this is one day late. I won't be late in the future, but yeah, this was just a different circumstance, and also I had a head injury to my hair. My head is fine. The hair is horrible, so we're covering it up. I look like Oliver Twist, but I hope this is interesting. Okay, last week I talked about status ambiguity and how that relates to culture and fashion. And by that I just mean that everything feels really muddled right now, status-wise, right? Like the democratization of fashion, quote-unquote, conversations, the accessible handbags, the luxury secondhand market becoming more and more accessible and more people knowing about it, fashion conversations broadening to be more inclusive of everybody and becoming just more of a pop culture spectacle to talk about high fashion individual runway shows rather than these huge moments. Everything in fashion seems to be accessible to everyone, which makes it so that fashion is not this distanced elitist space anymore, as it's works to not be. We are lacking these clear distinctions that we used to have, and status feels really muddled. William Hazlitt says, fashion is an old jumble of contradictions and sympathies and antipathies. It exists only by its being participated among a certain number of persons, and its existence is destroyed by being communicated to a greater number. What I was describing it on Twitter is that people in 2020 were obsessed with saying, I know what this is when it comes to personal style. I know exactly what this is. I know about this designer from the underground. I know about this designer from Japan from the 90s who only did 2 collections. I know this, I know this, I know that. I know Walter von Behrendonck. I know Rick Owens. Oh, I don't even just know Rick Owens. I know November 2020 47. I know CCP. I know Ishii. Like, a lot of people wanted to signal, I know. And I think that even when they were doing these era-based trends of tapping into the early 2000s fashion, what I was saying was they weren't doing I like. Like, they were trying to prove that they knew about hysteric glamour. They were trying to prove that they could get clothes from Bai because they know to get clothes from Bai, rather than having fun with fashion. They're like, the fun is I'm signaling that I know. It's not like the fun is I enjoy these clothes and fashion and personal styling. I'm proving that I know this, and that's fun for me because the status that it gives me above. And I think that where we're coming to now is I don't care, I don't have to. It's more fun for me that I can divest. I don't have to signal, I don't have to use labels and high fashion brands to signal that I know, because I don't even have to care, which is an even more elevated way of being inconspicuous in your dressing, but also secretly signaling status, to be like, I don't have to care about that. And that's why it works so well for celebrities to tap into this fashionable uncaring. And I think that that's what will continue to prevail in these high fashion spaces. I don't think that this is going to be a massive trend where you go into Marshalls or Walmart or Shein and they're doing these super inconspicuous forms of dressing. I think this is something that might take a long time to trickle down, but I do think at the top areas of high fashion, that's all it can do. And also people are getting exhausted of these kinds of dressing. All these ways that status keeps getting muddled throughout our culture and society led me to believe that there's going to be something that people have to do to distance themselves and create distinctions between the wealthy and the public that don't involve typical or conventional forms of status signaling and distinction. So I said that last video. I went into really extreme depth if you want to watch it, but this video I want to talk about some possible examples. I'm just going to start and jump into it. The first example that I had was I think there's going to be less specification, and I think people are going to continue to distance themselves from conventional luxury signaling, conspicuous consumption, but I don't think it's going to be like the minimalist fake deep art inconspicuous consumption. I think in general people are going to pull away from some luxury brand. There is a user on TikTok whose name is Tanner Dean, and he always says just buy the reference, and what he's saying is, if you see that YSL has done a style of jacket, you could actually get the vintage jacket that the YSL design is based on. I do think more and more people will move toward that. That's something that Eleanor Torres pointed out to me, that specific quote and that specific example as we were shaping the idea for this video. And I think that that is the perfect example of where people are going to start going and continue going to divest entirely from some designer brands. I think some people will rely on vintage silhouettes and attaching to silhouette cut and certain pieces rather than caring about if they can signal status by associating with the luxury brand. I think it signals even more status to know fashion history and have the leisure time to be able to engage and indulge those things. And I think it signals more status to signal that you don't care about wearing a designer than it does to overtly say, well, I'm wearing designer, or I'm even inconspicuously wearing designer. To be completely divested from that, I think is going to be a way that a lot of fashionable, stylish people and the ultra wealthy are going to signal status in the future, I do believe. I think as we move further into the recession, it will be interesting to see which brands are able to satisfy the public and their interests through the growing sentiment around distrusting luxury brands and spectacle of chaos around some luxury brands. It'll be interesting to see who does it well. I think maybe some smaller luxury brands that are trying to emerge right now may push into the forefront as a result of this distrust and era. I think that's because it recreates what power and status are. Power and status, the power status to have leisure, right? I think with the concept of inconspicuous consumption, leisure, conspicuous leisure has always been a part of that, and conspicuously signaling like I have time to read and learn fashion histories and, you know, indulge in things like that. I think that that's a major assertion of status. There is something happening outside. It's a major assertion of status to say, I know this silhouette, so you might have thought it was this designer, but it's actually what this designer was inspired by. And I think that's like the next step in signaling. So I think during the 2020s, or the early 2020s, like 2020 when we were in quarantine, a lot of people wanted to signal, I know these designers. Now everybody knows those designers. Now more and more people in the fashion space know those designers. So I think the next step after that is to enter the vintage market and either get completely unknown designers, not care about designers, or like completely and entirely divest from that to signal status. Another possibility is that people look for inverted status. I think it makes perfect sense. This is something I've been talking about a lot for the last 2 years. Like rich people looking poor, ultra luxury brands doing poor or destroyed looking garments and accessories. The return of workwear. I also think an interesting and fun area of status inversion are these really coveted brands and interesting people who have completely divested from what's going on in the mainstream without intellectualizing what they're doing as this ultra serious rebellion, and instead existing in this like we're just having fun over here realm of society. That is the, I think, future of fashion and culture right now. Brands like OGBFF, content creators like Luke Blovad, artists like Jesse MP3, these are like very futuristic, fun places. Aaliyah's Interlude as well, like without making every single thing that you do so politicized and so serious and so complex and so deep, it allows for something to divest from and like pull away from what's going on in the mainstream, but continue because it's a source of relief for people. I think that's what people need. People need relief. Like, we're in such difficult times. I think we're trying to mimic the early 2000s spirit at this point instead of the fashion. And the spirit was like the simple life, like reality TV, wife swap. People want to pull away and not have to use their brains for a second and actually enjoy what's going on in culture and art and fashion. And anything that gives them an opportunity to do that while being this like ultra subversive place, I think it satisfies people greatly. And I think that that's where people are pushing to next. The return of blue-collar fashion. I talked about how in the 1970s it became really popular to align with blue-collar fashion for the white-collar worker, but also blue-collar like identity entirely. Like you have these white-collar guys driving trucks, even though they have nothing to put in their trucks like that. So they're driving trucks, they're going camping on the weekends. They're like superficially participating in things that the underclass has to do. Like, you're going camping for leisure because you can, to get away from the white collar life, but how do you perceive people who do actually live in a trailer, actually, and live close to nature in that way? So it says, wearing a conspicuously dated dress can be a form of vestimental imperfection for the purpose of enhancing status. So it's like signaling fashionable indifference, they say. It's like, I don't care. I'm so stylish that I don't have to care about those things. I get that the dress is out of date and I'm wearing it on purpose. And it's something that most people don't want to do. Now, I think with a lot of people, like in the first video that I made about doing more inconspicuous signaling in fashion, I think people think of this as like wearing Y2K. Like, Y2K is out of date. You look crazy, you look out of date. But I think people know that that's not the most crazy thing you could do in fashion. I think that most people wearing Y2K would be appreciated and understood as fashionable nowadays, including by the fashion illiterate. And so it would not be that kind of overt signaling, like trying to look out of date, really stylish, coolest person in the world for the early 2000s. I think it would be looking like, I think it's going to be very, very covert signaling. I don't think it's going to be typical or conventional minimalism, but I do think the ways of symbolizing things are going to be kind of like the Jonathan Anderson shouts. Like how I said before that J.W. Anderson, like when somebody was reviewing one of the shows, they said Jonathan Anderson talks in sound bites. And if you've seen like his work at Loewe and his work at his namesake house, you can see it's like this. I think those kinds of signaling, that's going to be more and more popular, to just say one simple statement and that's it. I think that that'll be really it. I think that people will find less value in such identifiable house codes, and that's why I think that there will be a huge shift over to independent designers. I think these very obvious house codes that we see one-to-one comparison posts of and history explanations of every single day on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, when we're engaging fashion content, are going to exhaust people to the point that they are looking for something new and that they are looking for less identifiable house codes. They're looking for independent designers that can offer something novel. Or I think people will continue to find value in brands like Maximilian's Ferragamo right now, or Tebe Magugu, or the interest in Martine Rose and global fashion, like when people started doing the lad bloke core fashions. I think that those things happen because people are kind of bored with what's going on in their constructions of fashion on the internet. And I think more and more people will branch out to find things that are less identifiable to participate in. They describe underplaying as a calculated affront to status conventions and an annulment of status hierarchy altogether. And I think that's what it's going to come down to. Annulling the status hierarchy entirely. I don't care about this. I don't have to participate in it. Because if you're participating in it, there can only be a hierarchy that goes so high where somebody's a winner. But also, in order for something to be fashion, groups of people have to participate. It can't just be one person doing it and then it's fashion. It's not fashion if only one person's doing it. And if you're so exclusive that nobody else can participate in it, people don't know who the elite classes are. But I think if the elite classes, or the fashionable, very stylish people as well, separate themselves by like divesting and being like, I don't even care about fashion. Fashion is just cool and fun for me, and like at the most, but mostly I don't even care about it. That will be a way where you can have a group of people who are signaling that they've divested from this in order to reinforce distinctions about status. You guys are so involved in fashion that you need to signal this way so overtly. You need to say you're wearing this and that designer. You need to say that you research fashion history. You need to make a TikTok dedicated to the fact that you know so much fashion history. I just don't care. I think Brenda Hashtag is also a really great example of this. She's like an extremely knowledgeable fashion person and very stylish. But she says that her everyday outfit is like a puffer jacket and leggings. And you would assume somebody who has the amazing collection of clothes that she does would be this like very, very like, I don't think bothered is the right word, but you know, somebody who's like, oh, I have to make sure my fashion looks so perfect, da 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 da. And is like really concerned with all of it. And she's so casual And I think that that is the elevated way of being at a time like this, where people are like, well, I have to make sure I'm wearing my hysteric glamour with my Walter von Behrendonck skirt, with my Vivienne Westwood socks, with my this and that, and I have to make sure it looks perfectly like 2002 or else. And then there's these people who are so into appreciating fashion as art and all these other things that they're just like, I actually just have to be myself and do my thing and divest entirely. You don't even know what I'm wearing. I know what I'm wearing. It's not overtly signaling anything, and it's all just about me and my relationship with it. And my relationship with wearing it, very casual, just having fun. You know, that's what I think will be the next step. And then the last part that I brought up was fashion victims. This is described as members of the public who adopt whatever is sold to them, regardless of the taste, relevance, or aesthetic appeal. This is in Fashion Desire and Anxiety. It's the too obvious interpretation of a designer's lifestyle. I said in my notes that it ties back to status ambivalence. You can look at somebody and recognize the ways that they've been confined to rules and laws dictated by fashion rather than using fashion as a tool for self-expression. I think the fashion victim, whether they realize it or not, will become beyond obsolete. This is not necessarily a video about judgment, but I do think that fashion will move into a way where people are like, divest, 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 and it won't be like at least peripherally cool, like, oh, at least you do have something from that cool big designer brand that we all like, and I don't really like what they're doing now, but I liked what they did in the 90s. I think it will not be cool. I think it will just be like, I'm not caring about that because we've divested, especially as we move further into this recession. I don't think that that will be a way of signaling status, to have absolutely no like personal style and way of communicating in fashion, but being able to buy a bunch of expensive designer clothes, I don't think it will be cool. I think people will see less and less value in it. And obviously there's a ton of people who don't see value in that now and have never, I just think it will become less popular and less accepted, become too pervasive for everybody to be a fashion person, for everybody to be able to have their hands on designer clothes, for everybody to be able to be doing all this high status signaling. I think the bubble has already burst. And also with the high velocity of fashion at this point, I think that we're at an impasse. There's fashion exhaustion at this point. It's hard for me to put the words together because I'm trying not to repeat things I've already said on TikTok, but we've gone beyond a certain point. I also believe people are divesting whether they want to or not because of the massive recession, growing class inequality that we have. I believe that people will be divesting for those reasons, getting rid of their designer clothes or not shopping as often for designer clothes. And I think that that's why people are going to value the novelty and uniqueness of the vintage market, divesting from things that anybody can technically get from a designer currently, and they're going to value independent designers more and more for the unique pieces that they can offer or things that they can get that other people can't get their hands on in the vintage market. Fashion Desire and Anxiety talks about how the elite class could previously maintain distinction through appearances, but we lack sumptuary laws now, so it's harder and harder for them to maintain that distance with getting dressed. Like I talked about in my last couple of videos, if the former CEO of Twitter can have the exact same style of Rick Owens boots as me, a normal person, what can we use as a distinction to know who's rich and who's not? We can't. And I know that people don't think that that's important, but for a lot of society to have meaning and structure, it is important for a society to have understandings about that. It's not important for like me. I'm not like, who's rich, who's poor? No, let me know. Like, that's not how I am, but it doesn't really matter how I personally feel about it. For a society to have these structures, especially for the elite class to rule and, perpetuate these forms of oppression, they do want these distances between themselves and especially the middle class. So we know that fashion in nature relies on the inherent obsolescence of fashion. So something is brought forward, we know it's going to go out of style. Simmel says fashioning identity is a tragic game, a time bomb hardwired to self-detonate as the inevitable part of diffusion and social saturation. Okay, so I've talked before about normcore and people participating in these really, really pared down forms of signaling when it comes to era-based fashion trends. I think in general that will be a shift that people who are interested in the personal styling sphere go to, and the elite go to as well. I was writing about how in 1961 after Quaint, and like they don't really invest too much in their appearance, and I think that that's where we're going to continue to head. Now, this form of dressing was already popular. Zoe Kravitz has always done this her whole time in the public eye as far as being a personal style icon. And I do think people do this when it comes to era-based trends, but I think that this will continue to broaden. We've seen this flow of people adopting not only like blue-collar fashion styles, but I think fashionable indifference is the perfect description of it. I think people are going to want to signal indifference rather than knowledge and status. It makes people think. A lot of people have complained about how they look like influencers, or they look like internet people, or they look like fashion victims trying to recreate the runway in these like higher fashion discussion spaces. And yeah, I just think that it'll continue to get tired. But also, this is just one area of fashion. I'm not making I'm not making a generalization about all of fashion. I'm not saying like, so be on the lookout. I live in a major city. I live in New York, and I work in fashion with fashion brands and things like that. I don't really know that this is something anybody else needs to worry about. It's just something that was super interesting to me. And I hope that this made any kind of sense. I'm going to be editing it and putting it up the same day, so prayers up. I'm gonna be on live. You guys can always check me out on live. I go on live on TikTok pretty often while I'm working, and this was really fun and interesting to take a look at and think about. I'm gonna continue to make videos about this over the next couple of months as the ideas come to me. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for getting me to 80,000 subscribers. I am so thankful for it. My mom thanks you, my friends thank you, and yeah, just thank you guys, and I'm looking forward to making my next video this week, probably more about like MySpace instead of this topic. I think I want to talk about like MySpace and like Habbo Hotel and Avatar Palace and stuff. But yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to you guys. Bye. This was really fun. My stomach hurts.